Hey everyone, this is Beardo, and welcome to the new improved Minutia Minute. It's really exciting to be back in front of the camera. This is, of course, the final episode of the modern age history of Batman. I'm honestly pretty excited to be done. I did the first 10 videos for me. Like, I was all about, like, let's catalog my books, let's tell this big story, it'll be fun, it'll be a chance for me to exercise my trivia muscles and stuff like that. After about the 10th episode, I was kind of like, oh my god, are we done yet? This is horrible. I was really regretting my decision to do a video a day for a month. What can I say? Is that a surprise to anyone? But honestly, the thing that kept me going was you guys, because you guys were so positive, you had so many great ideas, so many things to say, and I really felt like I was contributing something a little extra to the community, and that was really, really great. And now that I'm on episode 30, I am so excited because this is the big conclusion, and I got to the end. I've got a humongous playlist that's going to be well over 4 hours long, maybe into 5 hours, I'm not quite sure. By the time I post this video, I'll have an idea. But yeah, I mean, that's a lot of video for you guys to watch, and so many of you stuck through the whole thing. It's been a real treat. So I want to say one last time, thank you for joining me, and I hope that this is a good way to wrap things up. Now, as I said yesterday, we're going to be looking at zero issues today, and I'm not going to look at all of the Batman zero issues because there are 14, 15 of them, whatever there is. I picked 6 very specific ones I want to talk about, and we're going to be going over them in kind of chronological order rather than sort of least favorite to most favorite, which is my usual shtick when I review, you know, current comic books. I'm not going to go into timeline in the sense of, like, you know, how did all this fit into 5 years? Like, who gives a crap, frankly? You know, what matters is the characters. Are they there? Are they not there? What's changed? What order did things happen? If DC says it happens in 5 years, I don't really give a crap. But you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to waste my time with numbers. I'm not a mathematician. I'll just go with it. I wish I could get as much done in 5 years as Batman seems to have gotten done in 5 years. And I'll just leave it at that. So what we're going to focus on today is really reviewing the issues proper, just like a regular review I would do, I used to do before this month. And then just kind of look at the implications of what this has on the modern age we just went over. So the 6 books I'm going to talk about, I picked fairly specifically because I felt like they tied well into the stuff I talked about with the modern age. And there's one book that I'm not talking about, or I should say I haven't read and I'm not going to review, but I am going to talk about it a little bit at the end, but it doesn't quite fit in with the other ones. We'll get to that though when we get to it. So let's kick everything off with probably the issue that has come out most recently, the issue that takes place the earliest, and actually my favorite issue out of all of the New 52 books, and this is actually a really big surprise to say, but Batman the Dark Knight was an excellent zero issue. This doesn't have any surprises. I know that, you know, the big complaint with the New 52 zero issues is, you know, well, we get it, we didn't need it, but they're okay, you know, some of them are okay. This one, honestly, even though that's true of this, I think that the quality that Greg Hurwitz brought to the writing for this really rises above that complaint. What we get in here is a really, really excellent character study of Bruce Wayne in his youth, basically going into school. And not only is this a time period that we haven't really covered before, at least in the detail we have with this, what we have covered before has come from other sources, like Batman Begins. I was really worried going into this book that it was going to be basically the events of Batman Begins, where Bruce Wayne brings a gun to court and is planning on killing Joe Chill, and, you know, ends up not doing it because someone else beats him to it, right? I'm really glad they didn't do that, and I thought that, you know, that was a brilliant move on Christopher Nolan's part. Something that, you know, should have been in the Batman universe and never was, but this brings a new perspective to that and puts a new spin on it in a way that's very unique and says something very different about the character, and yet still the same. So let's dig into the book and I can kind of explain myself a little bit better. I'm not going to really talk a whole lot about the art. I will say I did enjoy the art. It was very good. There was only one big story problem that I had with it at the very beginning, which is when you meet up with Bruce, it's after his parents are dead, and you get this big sort of splash page here, you know, his wife and father's his mother and father's overcoat. That's why I was trying to figure out why that wasn't coming out right. His mother and father. And he has some dialogue in here that doesn't make any sense. Well, I'm getting this out of the way first because most of this book is excellent. But you have Bruce Wayne talking about, like, you know, he thought there would have been time with his parents, time for them to know him and the person he was going to become. And, you know, time for him to know them better as an adult. Frankly, that doesn't sound like children talking. You know, Bruce Wayne's like 9 years old. This sounds like a parent who's lost a child saying, I wish I knew what my child had grown up to be. I don't feel like a 9 or 10-year-old kid really has that perspective on life to be able to make that statement, which made me really worried going into this book. Because this is, you know, the third page, and I'm thinking, ooh, this dialogue doesn't feel like it's written in the right perspective. It feels like it's written from Thomas Wayne's perspective if Bruce Wayne had died more than Bruce Wayne's perspective. But then he quickly moves past that and really starts diving into who Bruce Wayne is. And, you know, Bruce Wayne is OCD. Everybody knows Bruce Wayne is OCD when it comes to, you know, doting out justice and dealing with crime. And the thing that makes this story great is you get Bruce Wayne trying to solve his parents' murder. Because at this point he doesn't know that it's Joe Chill, so he goes back to the alley and he's trying to make sense out of this killing that's happened, that, you know, that's taken his parents' life. He sees this bum, and, you know, this bum explains to him, like, you know what, kid? Like, your parents had lots of enemies. You know, they're two, you know, straight people in a crooked world, and, you know, that lightens a lot of people's wallets. It creates a lot of enemies from within, and, you know, that's probably what happened. And, you know, Bruce Wayne instantly is out to find out the truth of, you know, who assassinated his parents. What is the, you know, what are the machinations at work behind this event? And as the story builds, we get into, we have a really wonderful scene with him in school, and he's learning about Emerson and Edgar Allan Poe. And, you know, the teacher is basically explaining Emerson's belief was that if you looked into the heart, looked into your private heart, you saw beauty and light and the pattern of the natural world. Now, what she's talking about is, or he, sorry, is it she or a he? I think it's a he. Anyway, what this teacher is talking about is, you know, Emerson and a lot of those romantic poets of the time seeing this divine machination in nature, and that there's something divine and systematic about this, what's seeming grand chaos. Now, on the flip side, the teacher starts talking about Poe, who, as the teacher says, inverted the myth of America, claiming that when he looked into his heart, he saw instead chaos and darkness. And you have this, you know, dual sense of dual reasons here, or dual ideas of the world. You have a sense of, you know, complete, you know, control in that it's all a part of a big system, and you have this sort of element of chaos. And instantly you have the dichotomy of Batman and the Joker. And this is really important coming for Bruce Wayne because, of course, Emerson is also, you know, Mr. Civil Disobedience. And, you know, what's a better example of civil disobedience than a guy who dresses up like a bat and deals out justice himself when the system has failed, right? So, anyway, I really enjoyed that moment, and it really informs, you know, why the death of his parents has made him, is going to ultimately make him become Batman. And it's not so much that he wants revenge for his parents' death. It's a lot more that he needs to find a reason out of something that's ultimately senseless. And that's what we find out at the end of this, which is the person who killed Bruce Wayne's parents is Joe Chill. He's this drunk loser who needed money for booze. And his parents came out of an alley at the wrong time, and this guy took advantage of it, and they ended up dying. And there's no reason to be found behind it. And the fact that Bruce Wayne has to come to grips with that truth and can't is in a lot of ways the real reason he became Batman. And I think that this issue absolutely does a phenomenal job giving us a character study of Bruce Wayne and illustrating that point, the difference between reason and chaos. And it's something that I thought was done sort of to just the right comic book tone. It's not over the head, but it's not subtle either. And at the end of this book, you have Bruce Wayne basically going off to see the world. He's going to make sense of the world as a whole, and he's going off on his long journey where, you know, he leaves Gotham City. Now, the story picks back up, in Detective Comics issue number 0. And this is not nearly as good of an issue as The Dark Knight. As a matter of fact, it's written by the same person, so it should be fantastic, but it just, for me, it fell flat. Partly, you know, you skipped the whole training aspect, and you're sort of right at the end of the training. Now, the big thing we learn about Bruce's character in this is really the moment he learns about betrayal, and the moment he learns that he can't trust anybody. Now, there's a certain importance to Batman not being able to trust people, but doing a whole issue on that isn't really necessary. And the whole idea that you have the whole world around him is chaos, and he believes there has to be a reason beneath it. Like, he's automatically being betrayed every single day, and you don't need an extra reason. So you have this woman who, you know, sets him up and yada yada yada. It's a pretty typical bait and switch kind of a deal. Not really that much to write home about. The thing that's interesting for me in this is actually the backup story, and flipping through it here. We get The Long Wait, the follow-up story by James Tynion IV and Henrik Johnson on pencils. And this basically chronicles Alfred having to wait for Bruce Wayne to return. This is another thing that could have gone too far Batman Begins-y, and this actually is probably something that they really took specifically from Batman Begins, because you have outside forces coming in and saying, Bruce Wayne's been gone 7 years, we're declaring him dead so that we can move in and kind of take over. And of course, Alfred is the only person standing in the way of that. Now, the reason why this is really interesting is because I have a theory going, and I'm not going to make any promises, but let's just talk about this for a second. So, you've got this guy coming in to take over Wayne Enterprises and take control of all these assets, and without those assets, he's nothing. He is washed up. And the person who comes in to, you know, threaten Alfred and, you know, sort of make his big move is illustrated like this. And we have a Joker story literally around the corner in issue 13. On top of that, in the next issue, which I'm about to talk about, we have the Red Hoods popping up. And I'm so excited because does anyone else think that this may be yet another incarnation of who the Joker was before he was the Joker? We'll see. Anyway, so that's just my theory about the backup story. All in all, Detective Comics, not great, not necessarily worth your time. The next issue that really, for me, was kind of worth your time, actually very worth your time, was the actual Batman issue. Not because it was a 0 issue, and not because it did a phenomenal job of sort of, you know, giving us the history of Batman. Although this is, you know, Batman before he's Batman, I think. Maybe he's not Batman yet. He's still Bruce Wayne dressing up at night, but not as a Batman. But the thing that makes this interesting is, as I said before, we've got this Red Hood gang in town, and you've got this guy who has set out to basically ruin Wayne Enterprises. By the end of this, there's a very specific moment where he's like, let's take on Wayne Enterprises, and you know, we'll blow the whole thing sky high, he says at the end. And, you know, maybe he wants revenge. Maybe he's the guy from Detective Comics. I hope that's what it is. Anyway, and it says the story continues in 2013. That's the Joker. Come on. Anyway. So let's talk about origin stuff, though. So you've got Bruce Wayne in his early days, before he's Batman, but he's still out there fighting crime. He has an interesting kind of relationship with James Gordon, but it doesn't add a whole lot. He's not actually in the Batcave yet. He's already sort of building places around the city, which was kind of an interesting juxtaposition, rather than, you know, having the Batcave first and having these sort of outposts later. It's kind of flipped around. But the thing that I guess really struck me about this issue in terms of origins is really what happens, again, in the backup story in Tomorrow, also written by James Tynion IV. And this story is what happens when Batman does come to town. And the thing that's really great about this is it's not about Batman at all. It's about the people who were inspired by Batman. And since this is a 0 issue, you can kind of read this from the perspective of, let's pretend we don't know who Tim Drake is. Let's pretend we don't know who Barbara Gordon is, or Jason Todd, or Dick Grayson. And you just sort of have this feeling that you know these people have just been affected by the first time, let me show it, the bat signal is shown over Gotham City, calling out that yes, Batman exists and he is sort of a force to be reckoned with, and things are changing in Gotham City. Now, we see that moment from the perspective of all of our main supporting cast. Batgirl, and all of our three main Robins, excluding Damian, because obviously he wasn't in Gotham City. And it's really great to see, you know, you get Jason Todd as, you know, this sort of juvenile delinquent who, you know, is suddenly taken by, you know, this new authority, and at the same time is still, you know, kind of a bastard. You have Tim Drake, who is immediately inspired, but it's not really entirely clear, and that's something we're going to talk about a little bit, because that's a very complicated thing to talk about. And then you have Dick Grayson, who's already out there helping people, and all of a sudden he has this new symbol to look up to and, you know, be his inspiration. And the idea that, you know, Batman is a symbol, and he's there to inspire people to do good, is something that I think is really important to Batman as a successful character, and James Tynion IV really does a great job of exuding it in this backup story. And the thing that makes it even more effective is, of course, you know that all these people are actually Batman success stories because they become vigilantes with him. And all in all, that was a great little bit. Actually, my favorite part of the Batman title that Scott Snyder put out this month. Alright, we got 3 books left, and I'm losing my voice already, so I'm going to kind of try and get through these a little bit faster. What we are going to talk about now is some of those people that we saw in the background of that follow-up story in Batman. We saw the beginnings of Dick Grayson as Robin. We saw Jason Todd as Robin. The book that we're going to talk about that I am not going to really review because I didn't pick it up is Tim Drake as Robin in issue 0 of Teen Titans. Is that where he showed up? Anyway, we got his origin in that one. And then we are going to go over Damian, because that's obviously a really important part of the last chunk of the modern age. So let's kick it off with Dick Grayson. This is another issue that I generally really enjoyed. The thing that makes this book interesting is, you know, obviously you have the Zucco story, and, you know, the only persons whose origin has changed less than Batman is probably Dick Grayson's story. It's always Zucco, it's always the circus, it's always all of those things. They get that out of the way right at the beginning of this issue and worry about the aftermath. One of the great things about this is, you know, with Tim Drake, you know, he was someone who figured out who Batman was and came and, you know, went to him for all those various reasons that we talked about, you know, almost a month ago now. And in this, you have Bruce Wayne independently take in Dick Grayson. And Dick Grayson finds out that he's Batman for the same reason, basically because he's very perceptive and he recognizes sort of, you know, movements and mannerisms, and he realizes that this Batman person that he runs into is the same person as Bruce Wayne, his mentor, or whatever you want to call him, his adopted dad. The thing that makes this particular issue really good is you're really following up with that idea that Batman is someone who inspires people to do good, and Robin goes out as Robin before he goes out with Batman. He's actually out fighting crime on the streets by himself, and Batman sort of becomes this guy who's sort of following him around and making sure he's okay, but at the same time he's not stopping him. And I think that's a really great explanation of sort of how you introduce the idea that Batman, the symbol of social order in some ways, would take in this child into this horrible situation. And the answer is he doesn't. This child goes off and does it on his own, and Batman's just sort of there to help him along the way until eventually they form a partnership. And I like that idea a lot better than I like the idea that, you know, Dick Grayson's like, oh shucks, please take me with you. I really want to go get Anthony Zucco. And then he's like, okay, Robin, I'll take you with. Your persona is now Robin. Not something I'm a big fan of. One of the other fun things about this is we get a new Robin costume. I'm guessing if you're a hardcore Robin fan, this may piss you off, I don't know. But I dig this costume. I think it's really cool. The new look for Robin when he was Dick Grayson is badass, in my opinion. So anyway, that's Nightwing in a nutshell. The big difference here, again, is that Robin fights crime on his own before Batman sort of takes him in as Robin, which makes for, in my opinion, a stronger version of Dick Grayson that I really enjoyed. Alright, next up we got Jason Todd. And Jason Todd is very different. He has gone through so many iterations over the years. He used to be, you know, Dick Grayson light, basically, before Crisis on Infinite Earths. Then he was this social deviant that was stealing the hubcaps off of Batman's Batmobile, and Batman took him to a halfway house kind of situation that didn't work out, and then finally takes him in as the new Robin. And one of the things about that version is his parents all died because of Two-Face, and so there's this whole element of revenge a la Anthony Zucco. This issue simultaneously is excellent and terrible at the same time, because they set up a really, really interesting way to review Jason Todd's life, and that's from the perspective of his parents. Now at the end they're gonna tear it all down, and we'll talk about that when we get to it, but basically you get Jason Todd's story from birth to death to rebirth. And the thing that's important is, and that makes this really effective, is, you know, he isn't a social deviant because he's just been out on the streets forever and, you know, he hasn't been with his parents for a long time. Like, he's part of an abusive family, and, you know, he's been dealing with a lot of difficult things throughout his youth, and he grew up you know, in that lifestyle, and that's what's really informed him. It's made him a lot more sympathetic, and that's part of why, you know, Jason Todd has changed so much, because when he first came back from the dead, he was a straight-up villain, and now that he's an anti-hero, they've really done a good job of adapting his origin to fit more of an anti-heroic sensibility, rather than just that straight-up villain that people just happen to really like because they're evil. And that, I'm talking to you fanboys, right? So anyway, when Batman kind of first comes onto the scene, he is, basically he takes in Jason Todd because Robin was taken into Leslie Tompkins. And so there's this element that he was taken in by Bruce Wayne for Leslie Tompkins rather than Batman taking in this kid. And that's another aspect that I like. And the reason why Jason Todd ultimately becomes Robin is a symbol that Batman gives to him as, I'm going to tell you the whole truth about me so we can build a relationship. And that inevitably means that he has to tell him he's Batman. And it further inevitably means that Jason Todd's going to become Robin. And that's how he ultimately becomes Robin. And again, I find that a lot more effective than sort of the fly-by-night way you do these things month to month. It's nice to kind of have these things kind of tweaked to fit the characters that they develop into, rather than the direction that the writers think they're going to go on, and then they obviously, over the course of 30 years, completely change. Now, one of the things that's most poignant about this is the idea that his parents are victim to their own circumstance. Like, the mother ODs and dies, and the father goes to prison and dies, because they're not great people. They're messed up individuals. But then you have this afterword, which is the man who created Red Hood. And it's a little Joker story. And what he reveals is that basically he created Jason Todd from the ground up. He caused his parents to die. He tricked Leslie Tompkins into taking him in. He tricked Batman into taking him in. Also, he could set up this new character, Red Hood, to torment Batman. And it was all a big Joker plot all along. Really? Like, that ending makes this simultaneously the best and the worst book of the Zero issues. I absolutely hate that, and I find it a lot more poignant that his parents weren't killed by Two-Face, they weren't killed by the Joker, they were a victim of their own circumstance and, you know, the life that they led. So all in all, Red Hood gets a 100% success and 100% failure rating from me, because very mixed bag. Alright, on to the last book we're going to review. We are going to look at Damian. Honestly, I don't have a ton to say about this, but I do think it's important to recognize that of all the people whose storylines have been dropped and altered, Grant Morrison has just gotten such a free pass through this whole New 52. It's like basically anything he did before the New 52, he can choose to more or less reestablish in this. The thing that is nice about this is that you kind of get an in-between story of basically the events leading up to Batman and Son. So you get the creation of Damian in sort of in the context of the New 52, but nevertheless, it's basically what the origin he would have had would be. This is a really good complement to Batman Incorporated issue number 2, in which we kind of got the backstory of Talia from Grant Morrison himself. And then everything basically leads up to the big moment where Batman first meets Damian, and it's literally an exact replication of what happened at the end of Batman and Son, where Damian has had Batman brought to him and says, "Father, I imagine you taller." All in all, this is a story I really enjoyed. It didn't do a whole lot, but I wanted to mention, mainly the reason why I want to review this is I wanted to mention that, like, hey, look at how Grant Morrison gets away with everything. Alright, anyway, the last thing we're going to talk about before I let you go is Tim Drake, because he is obviously the big missing link in Robin. DC has said he was never Robin, and they revealed in Teen Titans, and I haven't read this is just what I've read about Teen Titans, and I'm not going to buy the book, is that he chose to become Red Robin as a testament to Jason Todd, and not just being Robin again, because that sort of would sully Jason Todd's memory. I like that idea. That's probably the thing I like best about this new sort of Teen Titans origin he has. The things that I don't like, in the new context, he did not figure out who Batman was. Batman came to him and told him who he was, because Batman figured out that he was looking for him before, before he had the chance to figure it out. While that makes sense from Batman's character perspective, it takes a lot away from the aura of who Tim Drake is. The other thing you get is the name Tim Drake. This is a big spoiler, by the way, so if you don't want to hear this, go away. That Tim Drake, his last name is the name he has taken up because his parents are in witness protection. He actually has another name. Now, the reason why I'm not going to review this book proper in this whole sort of zero-issue thing is there are way too many questions left unanswered with Tim Drake. I'm curious to know what's going to happen with him. I really need to know what his new last name is, because obviously that's going to say a lot about this character's backstory. I do think that Tim Drake is someone that, if that's the origin that they're going with, he's coming out a weaker character, and that's probably the biggest disappointment for me out of these new 52 zero issues, and the reason why I'm not really taking part in that whole Teen Titans thing, because I just don't like that. So anyway, today we looked at a lot of stuff. We went through the early days when Bruce Wayne was still in school. We saw him travel the world in Detective Comics and eventually return to Alfred in Gotham City. We saw the advent of the Red Hood gang and their rampage through Gotham City as Bruce Wayne tries to combat him, but all in disguises and never dressed up as a Batman. We see when he does finally dress up as Batman, the effect it has on the people through the eyes of Tim Drake, Barbara Gordon, Jason Todd, and Dick Grayson, which, again, the best part of this story for me was that backup story. And then we get to see some of the supporting cast. We saw the rise of Dick Grayson as Robin and later Nightwing. We saw the rise of Jason Todd as Robin and later Red Hood. And then finally, we saw that Grant Morrison gets away with whatever he wants in Batman and Robin. I don't mean to have hard feelings about that, because, as I said, way back when I reviewed Batman and Son, it was his best storyline and one of his most important contributions, and I'm glad, actually, that they didn't change a bit of it here in Batman and Robin. So there you go. Those are the books I reviewed today, and this concludes the modern age history of Batman. This is it. No more modern age history of Batman for me. I will be back someday soon for the Bronze Age, so get excited for that, but I promise you it is not going to be anywhere near the next several months. Anyway, so for those of you guys who are new to my channel and have sort of just subscribed because of my modern age history vids, I'd love it if you checked out some of my other videos I've done. I do weekly reviews, and I hope that you guys stick with me and start watching those, because those are what I really love to do, and I really like to dig in deep with what's going on in comics week to week, and I'm very excited to be back doing that. For those of you guys who have been waiting all month for that to happen, thanks for sticking with me, and I will be back this Wednesday with your regular Wednesday comic book review show here on Minutia Minute Comic Book Reviews. So thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you all very, very soon. This is just the beginning.